And thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. You are listening on Truth for Our Time as we help you live God's Word in today's world, helping you when the headlines hit home. Today we'll talk a little bit about headlines, a little bit about fake news, a little bit about things that are happening in our community and this season. Let's not forget, this is the one time of year we can talk about the babe in the manger, the gift, the incredible gift of a Messiah, a Savior, who came as a sacrifice for our sins, so that we have the promise of eternal life with him in heaven if we believe in him here on earth. Let's not forget that and make sure we talk about that with our friends. I have a special guest today. Some of you know how excited I've been about this. It's not every day that you get to talk to one of your heroes. And the gentleman we're going to speak with today is one of my heroes. He's been on the show before. His name is Bazzel, but many of you now recognize him even more because of his new show that he's doing on NBC, The Blacklist. You may have seen him on that show. Baz, thank you for joining me.
Sounds good, and thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Very good. And Chris, I don't know if you can hear it. Chris is our producer today. It's a little bit warbly there, so I don't know if we can fix that connection. But so Baz, let's just talk first. Shall we talk first about The Blacklist? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, first off, I knew that you were consulting for television productions and movies for quite some time, and I knew you had guest spots. But how did this come about, that you ended up on this show, I think maybe with one spot the first season, and you're growing ever more on the show? Your character is.
Yeah. Thank you. It was interesting. I got a call from the executive producer, Michael Watkins, an amazing director, probably one of the best television directors in Hollywood. And he asked me if I could come to New York to train some people on a scene. It was kind of a warehouse scene. They're storming a warehouse and kind of a shoot 'em up thing. And I said, of course. And then I hesitated and I said, well, what if I just bring the real guys in? And he said, well, sure, that'd be great. So I had one guy on his way back from Afghanistan. I had another former CIA special operations guy from another place. I had another former Navy SEAL guy, and I called them all up and said, look, we need to just run over here and do this. So they flew us out to New York, and we shot the scene, and obviously, evidently did a very good job with it. And 2 weeks later, Michael called me up and said, NBC saw you on that episode when they were editing it, and they want to know if you would come back and be the head of Red Reddington's Mercenary Army as a reoccurring character. And I went, wow, what a blessing. Sure, I'd love to. And so I've been there ever since. It's been an amazing opportunity to share the gospel. Sometimes not openly, but in just my actions there.
Right.
And it allows me to pay some bills, which is great. And I just have to say, by no means, do I think that I'm going to be the next great TV star or movie star, and that's not even in the formula, so to speak. But it does provide me an opportunity and to do something that's fun and be paid for it. And it's always nice to be, to be paid for something when they're not really shooting at you. So that's really nice.
So let's talk a little bit. There's a couple things I want to talk about here, but for those folks who may or may not know what The Blacklist is, how would you describe the show? And I have to confess to you, Baz, I don't watch the show. I think it's spooky. I don't want to know all these nasty things that probably happen in the back of people's minds and actually shadow governments or whatever. And two, I'm usually traveling in the evenings, but my daughter and my husband so love this show, and that's what was happening. They were watching the show when I walked through one day, and I said, wait a minute, that's Baz. So my husband did a quick search, and absolutely, you're one of the few people in Hollywood that we know that didn't change their name. Baz is the name you use on the show.
It is, and it wasn't by my design at all. I just ended up showing up on set, and that was the character's name, and they went with it, so it was like, okay.
And
but, the show is about an evil that exists within governments and within our government, of course, and a network of globalized players. And there is a guy named Red Reddington who is a notorious criminal that the FBI had been after for years. And he turns himself in and offers to basically take down the evil empire, which they call the Cabal. And so, I mean, there's a couple of other storylines involved in it, but that's what he does. He is kind of fighting fire, so to speak. The interesting part about the entire show and what the writers are doing with it is that it's not so far from the truth. Coming from my world and what we deal in, whether it was all my former CIA stuff or now dealing with the human trafficking aspects, we see this kind of hydra in the world today that has its tentacles in everything, whether that's people that are being paid off, whether it's, as most recently, you sent me that article about the satanic pedophile ring that was exposed out of Australia. And that's global, of course. And there was a time when you could put that on TV and people would go, wow, okay, that's TV, but it's not TV. Right. It's real. And so a lot of the things that you see on the blacklist, every time I shoot an episode, I simply go back in the files and kind of pull stuff out and I'm able to match it up and go, wow, they weren't so far off. So I don't know where the writers are getting their material, but I can certainly salute them. They're doing a good job with it.
So now you're making me wonder if maybe I do want to see this, but exactly what you said is one of the reasons I don't, because I think it's pretty true to reality. And because I work in politics, I want to think the best of people and do my best to stay focused. And so, yeah, but it is an entertaining show. And last night I was at dinner with several people after President-elect Trump and Vice President Mike Pence were here. And they were all talking about they all were familiar with this show. So, and I love the fact that, funny. As you say, you can witness on this show. I have to tell our audience, and I've asked Bazzel if I can do this just briefly. When my husband was doing this search for you, he was finding even more information than what I've known about you after working with you for several years now on human trafficking, that you are a life guarantor. Can we just tell our listeners what that is?
Yeah, there are 12 life guarantors around the world. We know each other, and very few people know us, so to speak. A life guarantor is someone that doesn't just get you from point A to point B when it comes to protecting you as far as security services are concerned. They are able to save your life in between those 2 points when everything goes upside down. So the skill set of a life guarantor is greatly expanded to include simple things, like, all right, now you found yourself locked in a country, but you've got access to some airplanes. The question is, can you fly that airplane out of there with your client? Or you're in the Congo and your client is shot, and so you don't have access to a doctor, but can you do the surgery that you need to do? So I was going to say it was a little unconventional, but it's not. It's just expanded skills, and I am sure there are many men and women out there that might be qualified to call themselves life guarantors, but since my time as being one, as I know, there's only 12 in the world. That's about it.
And it's not something you talk about. As long as I've known you, I've never heard you mention this, though I knew of some of the covert missions that you've been on. Not that I knew them, but I just knew your work was incredibly high risk and covert, and what you do is just so amazing for so many people. But I had no idea of this, and some blogger had found it and was just even more impressed with the Baz character on TV, and now talking about this. But so let me just say in front of our listeners, Baz, I just appreciate the man that I've known you to be, the heart that you have for children, for families, the walk that you have to share the gospel no matter where you're dropped in, physically, literally, wherever you're dropped in life, you share the gospel. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you. As long as I guess in all of that, so Tamara, is all of those things we do aren't what make us. It's who we are that makes us. And I think at the end of the day, if people know that our heart is with God, and we can be called a godly man, that is really what matters, to be honest with you. I mean, the world is full of so many qualified people that do so many really cool things, to be honest with you. I mean, you've heard me say this before. I am nothing compared to the people that I learned from or the people I came from, like my father, who was, 8 Special Forces, or the men that I serve with, former Special Operations guys, and the people I learned from. I mean, I salute them and I honor them, and they are an amazing, just amazing people. So at the end of the day, people don't care what you do. They just care who you are, and I think that's what we have to remember sometimes.
So, Baz, the way I met Baz for our listeners was at a trafficking conference. And let's tell our listeners, those who may not know, who may not be familiar with you, you have an association for the recovery of children. You go in when a child is missing, and I believe you have a 100% success rate. Is that correct?
Hello?
Did I lose you?
I did lose you. I lost you there. The volume went down.
Well, I just told folks about your Association for the Recovery of Children and the fact that when a child is missing, has been kidnapped either by a guardian or a non-guardian parent, but a guardian who is dangerous, or in sex trafficking, you're the one who goes and rescues that child and brings them back. And I think you have a 100% success rate. Is that right?
We do. That's been a great miracle. And not only 100% success rate, but I have to tell you that it is, in the biblical sense of the word, it is miraculous, because at the end of the string, so to speak, when we've applied everything that we can apply as far as our tradecraft is concerned, God always comes through with a miracle. I mean, I'm talking like the stuff that just blows you away, the stuff that you stand up in the pulpit and you preach about, the Red Sea opening. It's incredible.
Is that what gives you the courage to be so bold about your faith? Because here it is, the Christmas season, and I just mentioned this is the one time when you can actually share it and people will openly possibly receive it. But even in writing some of our Christmas cards, I know sometimes I think I don't want to offend people. If I'm going to send to a mass group, I don't want to offend people, but this is my faith. Is the situations that you've been in, seeing God's hand upon you, is that what gives you the courage to know you have to tell that faith? You have to share it?
Yeah. It is when God gives you great favor. You can't hide it, and it's not that you're trying to cram a belief down someone's throat. That's never it. But it's just, I mean, when the things that happen are so miraculous, you get so excited about it, and you just want to share it, And also, I don't really care what people think, about my faith and my belief in Jesus Christ. The reality of it is he stands historically, he stands on his own 2 feet, and I just follow. So, it's not my word, it's his word. And so,
See, and here I was
thinking, yeah, go ahead.
Even with this article, with this interview, I didn't want to blow your cover if you were at the blacklist. You can minister to someone and share the gospel in a relationship, but sometimes you have to earn that relationship before you can just openly do that. And I didn't want to put you in a position that might cause, hostilities towards you on the show. But you brought it up as far as your gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I just so honored that. You don't seem worried about it at all when we hear that Hollywood is so hostile to the faith and to Christians and people of good character. But you just went right into it. How can we help everybody else out there have that same courage?
I think you have to remember that at the end of the day, you stand before God. When you leave this earth, you don't stand before man.
Yeah. And
God directs your path. So if someone gets offended on, let's say, the show because they know that I'm a Christian and they don't want me on the show anymore, I'm okay with that. God will open up a door someplace else with me. And it's not that I go on set and I carry my Bible and,
right.
For example, like Harry, who is on the show, who's the head of the FBI. Harry's an ordained minister. And so, he shares his faith through his kindness and his love. And I think that's what I do also is, hopefully, I just try to do what Jesus would want me to do there. And that's be kind and care and be thoughtful and just all of those things. And sometimes
Hold that
it's
thought,
not about
Baz. Hold that
it's not
thought.
about sharing a scripture sometimes.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after these messages.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios.
And I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time as we help you live God's Word in today's world, helping you when the headlines hit home. It is December. I love December. I love Christmas. I love this time of year. And boy, this is a one time. And I love the fact that our new president-elect has already said, you can say Merry Christmas, and you can hear it. Last night, I got to be at the rally in Des Moines as the president-elect and the vice president walked through. And when someone at the microphone said, and he's told you can say Merry Christmas, the crowd just went crazy. And I think that's why you see, and I said it, you would, on election night, you would see recovery begin as people had a glimmer of hope. And you're already seeing that. He tapped into the American dream. He reignited it, and they fueled the movement. And now you're seeing it across the globe as leaders in other countries are saying, if America can turn it around, we can turn it around as well. And I just see a spiritual underpinning here. I see a political. I see a military. All of it coming together in how God has been able to bring this to being. I bring that up because it's just such interesting times we live in. But one of those people that makes it just so much better, when you understand God has placed you in this time, for such a time as this, no different than Esther, in your sphere, in your group, and you're supposed to find what that is and make the difference. We're talking to one of those individuals right now. You've heard us talking about the blacklist. Have you heard us talking about the first segment? Baz is his name on screen. It's his name in life. What he does on screen is much of from the experience of what he does in life. Association for the Recovery of Children is an organization Baz, and I know we've only got maybe, 10 minutes left with you, but do you want to share with people how you came about this idea that children needed rescued?
Sure, I'd love to real quick. And let me say this real quick. You asked the question in reference to James Spader, who handles the blacklist. You remember when the president-elect said, "I'm here to drain the swamp"?
Yeah.
That's kind of what the blacklist is about. we're draining the swamp. So
are you in the bad guys' army or the good guys' army? Aren't you in the bad guys' army?
We're the good bad guys, but we're the good guys, I think, and they were bad guys. So I'm not really sure. It's kind of like, I'm not really sure how it works. But
and depending on the writers, that could shift. So who knows?
It could shift, but so far I think we're seen as the good guys draining the swamp. So I think if President-elect wants to hire us, to help him do it, we'll do it.
And honestly, if I get a chance with anybody in the administration, I'm putting your name out there. I mean, you are somebody who's seen the darkest of the dark corners of the world. And
I have, and I am all about draining the swamp. There is. I loved it when he said that. To be honest with you, I think that the evildoers got scared, to be honest with you, because it's like the jig's up, we're coming after you kind of thing. And I admired that with the president-elect, to be honest with you, and the vice president as well.
Right. And he said that last night. You may want to listen to last night's speech. He said, "I just said drain the swamp. I didn't mean anything by it." And we got he did mean obviously what he meant, but it was not a thought-out, crafted statement. He just said, we need to drain the swamp. And he said, we got such a reaction that we started saying it more often. So you're absolutely right, and America wants to see it. We know that there's corruption there. We want to see it cleaned up.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah, I'm definitely giving your name to anybody in the administration I can, because I just think you'd be a benefit and an asset to our
thank you.
our president. Your service to our country has been incredible this far. You come from a long lineage of those who have served in the military, and I just thank you for what you've done. But the Association for the Recovery of Children started when you were on a mission in, was it Somalia?
In Somalia, that's correct, way back in 1993. And we rescued some children there who were the abandoned children of, I believe it's a story, it was of an American engineer. I think he probably had two families, one while he was contracting there and one back in the United States. And of course, we rescued them. And when I got back to the States, I just started looking to find out how many kids were missing. At that time, it was known that there were about 125,000 missing in the United States. Since that time, as you know, it's grown, and it's become more than just runaways and custodial parental abductions. It's become dark, and it's into child pornography, human trafficking, and the list goes on. And it is probably one of the darkest atrocities I have witnessed outside of, something like the killing fields, to be honest with you, because they are literally destroying the youth of this country.
Yeah. Yes. And harming them so much that as adults, many of them still deal with the injuries and cannot live out to the full capacity God had designed for them. So we're talking about the darkest corners of the globe, and yet, Baz, as we just saw the headline not too long ago, Des Moines has been listed in the top 100 sites of trafficking for children. So this is an issue that, though it's dark, it's happening in many of our neighborhoods.
It is right under our noses, and people, number one, Tamara, they don't want to believe it's happening.
Right.
They want to get on with their lives because it's so ugly that they don't want to be consumed with it. And honestly, some people are just trying to make it through life, and they've got their hands full with their own kids and other things. So, and then we've got issues with the bureaucracy. And one of the things that has happened over a long period of time is that our judicial system, not all of it, but parts of it, to include the people that we count on to do something about this and hold evildoers accountable, has been bought out, and it's corrupt. It reminds me of the Elliot Ness movie, The Untouchables, with Kevin Costner. When he got back into the bureau, he had to clean house first. And we need a good cleaning, to be honest with you, because there's so many people on the payroll. And
so not just on the payroll that are facing corruption, but many of them, we here in D.C. are entangled with the child pornography. Noreen Gosh, right here out of Des Moines. Johnny Gosh was taken, back in the 80s, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And she was the one who hired a detective at her own cost because whoever was supposed to be helping her just wasn't there. That the branches of the government, FBI or whoever it was, were not helping her they were not digging. So she hired a detective who led the facts led him back to Washington, D.C. And I'm not trying to tie this to the Pizzagate or anything else, though one of the articles does talk about that. And I will talk in the next segment about fake news. That's not what I'm saying here. There are people in government who are part of this trafficking. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, of all walks of life, whether it's pastors, lawyers, law enforcement officers, doctors, I mean, it's become an epidemic, and it's become a very sophisticated business model. And the fact that people know in order for them to continue to do what they want to do to harm children, they have to protect themselves. So they put their protection in place by putting their people in place and paying their people to remain in place. So, we just saw this just last week. We've got a young girl, she's 11 years old, and we're debriefing her, and she's telling me about the police officers that have been molesting her every time they pick her up. That's just wrong. That's wrong. And what happens is instead of the department sometimes, and I have a lot of friends, good law enforcement friends, so this isn't every department, but in this particular department, they're covering for their people. And they're covering because, I don't know, why? Because it's a brotherhood, a sisterhood, or are they covering because they've known about it for so long that if, in fact, someone gets indicted, they're going down the tube also. And I think that's more of what we're seeing happen. And also, Tamara, one of the things that this country, and hopefully the president-elect and the vice president will be able to straighten this up, is that people are not being held accountable. We discover something, we discover the evil or the crime, and we think because we expose the crime that something's being done about it, and it's not. It's not. And so, in my opinion, the greatest thing the president-elect and the vice president could do would be to keep their word, and people that are found guilty of crimes be held accountable for that in a big way. My rule of thumb is the law should be this. If you molest or sexually exploit a child, you should get the death sentence. That's it. Hands down. And I think if you had a law like that, I think you would see people think twice before they touched a child.
And of course, we're talking those that there is no question. It is not because supposedly we now have folks on the child offender books that was an allegation from, someone that disgruntled family member after divorce, etc. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about where there's absolute proof. We know that they've harmed children. Then you think there should be the death penalty.
Yes, I mean,
and you're not alone in that.
A total clear picture. I mean, that beyond a shadow of a doubt, there is admittance of guilt, or the evidence is so strong that we know they in fact did that. And I'm talking about we've got to start from the top down. We attack the trafficking issue or the molestation of children at the lower levels, and there'll be a news article that comes out about, John Doe that lives in a small town, and you'll get that article. When do you see the articles about someone in Parliament or in the Senate, right, or at the head of a big organization or a company that's found guilty, and an investigation isn't stifled or ramrodded, and those people end up going to jail for the rest of their life? We don't see that.
Right.
So when you talk about division in this country, and that is going to be a big challenge for the president-elect and the vice president also, because right now the country isn't divided because I'm white and you're black or you're Asian or whatever. It's not it. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to be said for the fact that we keep talking about I'm an African American or I'm a Chinese American or I'm a this American. We're all Americans. So throw that stuff out the window and just remember, hold on to your rights as an American with the Constitution and be that. But in that process, people are divided because they're seeing people committing crimes at the highest levels of government and business or whatever it may be, and nothing's happening to them. Right. And yet the little guy on the street, he's going to jail,
right,
for the same crime. And I think if the president can stand up, or the president-elect can stand up and set examples and make people as examples and say, you know what, it doesn't happen on my shift. You don't touch our American children. You don't do this without a penalty being paid. And he goes after them. I'll tell you what, he'll be the greatest president since George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan.
I think you're absolutely correct. And Ravi Zacharias, a great apologist of the day, has said your country will be known. A society is known by how you treat your children. So you're absolutely right, Baz. When we start protecting our kids, then I think, too, God can once again truly bless this nation as well. Right now, between abortion and what we're seeing as far as the molestation rate and the human trafficking, we've got to clean it up. Baz is my guest today. You'll recognize him from the show The Blacklist, which is now giving him some cash to help fund the work that he does to rescue children. Baz, I've asked you before, if you had money on hand, how many kids could you go rescue right now?
You mean this day?
Yeah.
I'm looking at a case file of 27 right now that we know where they are, and we could put operations into place for those 27 right now.
So how would people get money to you? And we've got to go to a break here in 30 seconds. So how can people get money to you?
Yeah, they can donate by check or PayPal. They go online and it'll show them how to do our PayPal. They can donate by check to P.O. Box 7000-59. Redondo Beach, California, 90277, Association for the Recovery of Children. And every bit of that goes towards operations. As you know, no one gets a salary with what we do. It's all volunteer.
Can you stay with us just a couple minutes when we come back?
I can.
Okay.
I certainly can. Thank you.
Folks, we'll go to a break. Truth for our time, giving you God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. Stay tuned. We'll have a few more words with Baz, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do. What type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And folks, you're listening to Truth for Our Time, Tamara Scott, 99.3 FM. You can hear the show Sundays at noon, or you can be here live with us Fridays, 10 a.m. and webcast1live.com. Webcast1live.com. Baz is my guest. You know him possibly from the Blacklist. We're thrilled that he now has that opportunity, one, just because there's some money coming in, because often he self-funds the work that he does in rescuing our children across the globe, those who need it. And Baz, just give that information again one more time. If someone who feels compelled, here we are, year-end giving. I hadn't thought about that when I asked you on the show, but many people will be deciding what to do with some funds before the year end. And you have on file right now 27 kids you're investigating that you could go and save 100% a success rate in getting these children out when they're in harm's way. So give that information again where people could find you or give you money to help find some of the 27 cases you're looking at right now.
Sure, certainly. If you go to our website, it'll give you guidance to donate through PayPal, or you can write a check or a money order or whatever, or sometimes people send cash, believe it or not, to our P.O. Box 7000-59, Redondo Beach, California, 90277, Association for the Recovery of Children.
All right. And right before we left, we were talking about the work that you've done, and I wanted to ask you, first off, let me just say to our listeners, Baz has agreed. We have spoken at these conferences with Tony Nassif. He organized many of the conferences that took place across the nation. Tony passed away this past year, and we will greatly miss him in this work. I am going to see what I can do to bring back a conference for Des Moines. Baz has agreed to come back and speak at that conference. We'll let you know when that happens, when we get that set up. If you want information on that, here's what you need to do. You need to email truthforourtime@gmail, truthforourtime@gmail. Get your name on that. Send me your name, phone number, email, contact list, your contact information, so that I can add you to the database. I'm not organized enough to send you emails you don't want. I won't be doing that, but it will put you in our database to give you information on that. And just put trafficking is your subject line of your interest, and that you heard Baz on this show. Baz, we're talking about draining the swamp, literally. We're talking about cleaning out, whether it's Department of Justice. I know with President Bush, G.W. Bush, I worked with some folks in the Department of Justice on obscenity and pornography online, and that has not happened. That whole force, I believe, was disbanded under Obama. And so we see in one of these articles you and I were talking about an 800% increase in pornography, which stimulates the risks and the molestation of these children.
That's correct. And, you have to, it makes you question why you would disband such an effective program, unless, of course, you didn't want anybody looking into your own personal stuff.
Right. So, we'll be coming back, folks. We will have you more information on this, whether it's the Des Moines site that we saw that information on that article. Baz, I hope you'll be willing to come back again. I know you're so busy and often in obscure places where we can't even reach you, but I thank you for the work that you do. And I know before you leave our listeners, there's been so much in this last election cycle. We talked a little bit about the division, the false narratives that were out there. But one of the things you appreciate and you have fought for to preserve for the rest of us is the First Amendment right. Burning the flag. How does that impact you, somebody who's fought to protect that right?
I'm amazed when I see lawyers on TV trying to redefine the Constitution, redefine the First Amendment, and tell us that it's okay to burn the American flag, or that's a form of speech. They tell us it's a form of speech. They have the right to express their speech by burning the flag, and I'm just puzzled because common sense tells me that if you have a protest downtown, and I see the neighborhood grocery store, and I have a beef against that, and I want to speak in that manner that I could be able to burn that grocery store down? Or if that, in fact, becomes the law in this land where a person, through their First Amendment rights, can use their form of speech by burning the American flag and nothing happens to them, then why should anything happen to me if my form of speech is to stop them from doing that? And what we see in this country is it doesn't go both ways. So I think that, and this is my, I have to say this is a prediction, or it's my warning to all of those people that abuse that First Amendment right, particularly when they burn an American flag, what we fought for, the freedoms for this country, and they choose to do that. You're going to start seeing veterans defending that flag, and the veterans are probably going to start wrapping people up in those burning flags, to be honest with you. You know, it's I listen to the talk on the street among veterans, and veterans have had it. I'm serious, and I would hope that it would never get to that, but they're abusing the privilege.
Yes.
And a lot of blood has been spilled to protect that flag since its conception, and it means a lot. Its symbolism means a lot in this country to us, but like I said, if they have the right to burn it, then I have the right to stop them from doing it.
Absolutely. And okay, so one, I just appreciate your words on this, and I want to hit everybody at home. It's not just what you see on the TV screen, it's how we live our lives each day, what's said in conversation that kind of sparks some of this as well. Baz, I know that you've got to run, but before you go, here we are in the Christmas season. What would you say to every person out there, one, either finding their path that God has for them? Not all of us are going to be one of 12 in the world like you are. But what is our role that God has for us? And what would you say to the families out there? Because you've talked about disposable societies. And boy, we see it when we discard our family so easily. And kids are the victims of that as well. What would you say to folks?
I would tell people that this is what God requires of us. To seek justice, to be kind, and walk humbly with our God. And if we do that every day, He'll give us the guidance. He'll show us purpose. He'll allow us to be courageous and stand boldly. For nothing we do on this earth matters as much as what we do for God and when we stand before Him. You know, we are just travelers here, to be honest with you. So love deeply during this season. Show Christ to all people and be not ashamed of the gospel. And I think God will richly bless us as a nation for that.
Baz, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome, Tamara. Thank you very much for having me. God bless you. You have a wonderful Christmas, okay?
Thank you, and same to you. Folks, if you're listening and you hear Baz's name, whether you watch the show or not, would you please continue to keep him in your prayers? Here is a man who literally goes out on the front line, sometimes in a very lonely, dark setting, a dangerous setting, to protect the children that he doesn't even know, but somebody has told him about that needs help. Thank you, Baz, for your work. Lord's blessings of protection on you, and may He continue to increase your field and your role on the show on Blacklist so that we continue to learn more about you and the work that you do, and He can bless you financially so you can continue to do it even more. Thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome, Tamara. And remember, tell everybody, let's get out there and drain the swamp, right?
Absolutely. America is ready for it. They are excited about it. So absolutely.
I agree.
Very good. Baz,
all right. God bless you.
Very good. Bye-bye. Baz has been my guest, and what a great guy. Just a sweet heart for such a tough exterior and the ability to go and do so much. Part of what we talked about in there was some of the narratives you're hearing. And in one of the articles that I have posted on Truth for Our Time, you can find it on my Facebook page, Truth for Our Time, it did mention the Pizzagate, but not Pizzagate, it just mentioned this pizza thing. And so I don't even want to get into any of that as far as what it is, but not for this segment, we will another time perhaps. But I want to talk to you about the false narratives. You heard in this election about false narratives and that Democrats are now saying Hillary lost not because of, scandals, email servers, the Russian reset, giving our uranium rates. No, to Russia. No, not any of that. They say she lost because of false news. We're going to talk about that when we come back and possibly have somebody from Family Research Council. We've kind of played phone tag here this morning. We'll see if we can get them in. So stay tuned, and we'll close out the show on that conversation, and you'll learn more right back after these messages.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And you're listening to Truth for Our Time as we help you with the headlines hit home, help you live God's Word in today's world, and hopefully help you have a little fun along the way and just how you're living with your family, what you're doing. Here's the deal, and you hear me say it every year. We want peace on earth. We all want peace on earth. We talk about it this time of year more than ever. We talk about goodwill towards men, peace on earth. We want it across the globe, and yet, do we have it across our dining room table? That's the question for all of us. And what do we do to ensure that we can have it in our homes? Because if you want that Kodak moment, that special day, then you've got to build up to it. It doesn't just happen all of a sudden Christmas morning. The magic of Christmas is long prepared, many hours before that in relationship building and having hearts right. So I just want to run that by you. As I was going off the break, I was talking to you about this false narrative. I want to come back to this, and I apologize, and here's what I'm going to apologize for. It would be easier to be able to talk to you about this on a daily basis, a daily talk show, and yes, we've been in discussion with the station about that, and I so much appreciate that, and I'm honored by that, and deciding if that's a possibility or not time-wise for me. It would be so much easier to keep these topics and be able to discuss them. As a weekly show, it's a little harder to get back to things. But so I apologize to you about that. But I'm going to jump back to something you heard in the news. I think it was this past week. They were talking about supposed Pizzagate, and you heard the last election. All these stories that Hillary lost, like I said, not because of any fault of her own, but because of false news. And even the President of the United States attacked false news. And they're imploring them to clamp down on our free speech on Facebook because of false news. It wasn't her issue. False news was not her issue. False motives, maybe. False stories, maybe, in what she had done and what she had said. But I want to talk about this false narrative because they played it up as it was. They're so good at doing the liberal left being a victim. And they bring this one story of a pizza owner being the victim of some story called Pizzagate because it came out of supposedly an email of John Podesta. I don't know. I'm not going to go into that. I don't have investigation into that right now. But they tried to make it all out to be that, Chris, you've got the second line going. I don't know if that might be the Family Research Council. Sorry about that, folks. That it's basically those nasty Republicans, those nasty conservatives that are doing everything they can to destroy. And it hurts. They like to make the liberals or the left the victims. And my point to you is, more often than not, I would tell you conservatives are probably the victims of a false narrative, whether you call it false news or not. Let's be clear. A lot of what you see in the mainstream media was a false narrative versus what they claim false news sites. Drudge was just a gossip site until the blue dress actually appeared, and then Drudge had credibility. So many of these other sites may be giving you snippets and truths that others will not give you. On our Facebook page today, I have one of the links about a story they said you wouldn't find in America. They won't print it anymore, but it's about corruption in the government with child molestation. And so pedophilia, and that's what Baz and I were talking about earlier. And he says we've got to drain the swamp of all those who don't want to obey the law. This is not a matter of your views as far as Christianity or your morality. We have laws in place. And if you don't want to obey the laws, there should be certain consequence, especially for those who are in the law and to be an authority. But I want to come back to this narrative of false news. I've got lines blinking. I have my FRC guest. Chris, are you on the line?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
I want to thank you once for hopping on this train this morning because we are zooming 1,000 miles an hour here. So thank you for jumping in. I was talking to my listeners and viewers about this story that has popped up that I saw on several news organizations, different ABC and I believe NBC, were trying to play up the poor victims of this pizza business and false news being the culprit. And I want to turn that to usually and more often, I would tell you it's conservatives, whether it's a baker out west, a photographer, or whoever that's more likely the victim of false news. And you're at Family Research Council. You guys were certainly the victim of false news. And we only have 2 minutes left now. But the shooter that came into Family Research Council, when was that? 2012 or 13?
2012, right. It was in August of 2012. And, well, you're right. I mean, one of the things is that, maybe just summarize real quickly. We're going to see a very concerted effort by the left to attack all forms of alternative media. Now, the pizza thing, it had to do with Reddit, which is just like basically an open bulletin board for all kinds of postings and stuff, right? And some other things. But they're really going to go after the sort of, I don't even think they're sort of moving off of Fox News and they're moving on to Breitbart and some of the really conservative websites and the opinion places that are really good, because they know that this is where people are going to get news. Now, in our case, we basically, SPLC has a website, this hate map. Floyd Lee Corkins went to this map. He was a pro-gay activist, and he just saw our name on there, and there was another group on there, Traditional Values Coalition. They were going to be like the second target. And sort of in that, it's like the medium is the message in these things, right? You put up a document like that, you whip people into a frenzy, and then they just sort of follow it along. And I think the biggest example of right now of false news is all of this stuff, the Black Lives Matter material, which is very left-wing. It's getting all kinds of credence in all these different cases. And we have like almost 10 or 12 police people who've been, men and women have been, assassinated, right? I mean, so I hope that helps, but I think you're exactly right on the money. But this is going to continue, and we have to defend the good news sources that we've got and people who are solid, because it's going to be an effort to have censorship.
And you hit on something there very well. If they're trying to lay blame on the supposed false news, then shouldn't we put blame back on those who have created this animosity towards our law officers?
Well, right. I mean, and especially when you're talking about cases where, it's like, like the case in Missouri where the grand jury came back with there were thorough investigations, and the man involved had been involved in a knockover of a convenience store. He beat up some small, like a not very big Indian immigrant who was the store manager. He was probably, intoxicated or on. I think that's sort of what that came out of the thing. But I mean, he grabbed for a gun of the officer in the car, and the gun went off in the car. I mean, they had like so many DOJ civil rights attorneys in Ferguson who wanted to crucify this cop, and they couldn't do it. Right. So I mean, but this narrative is developed around this case, and sort of a lot of these cases, and they built this basically this false industry out of this, and Black Lives Matter is an extremely hardcore left wing organization.
Yes.
But I'm just saying that. Just be aware of this. I mean, this is not some kind of accidental thing. These themes are happening all over, and the governments in Europe are doing this.
Hold on. We've got to go. Chris, we're out of time. I thank you for jumping on with us.
Hey,
Chris,
call anytime.
Hey, stay on the phone for just a minute, and I'll make contact with you, but we absolutely will. Chris Gacek from Family Research Council, who was the victims. They were literal victims of someone who had gotten false narratives from the Southern Law Poverty Institute. So, folks, we're out of time. Be encouraged. Never be complacent.